Hi, I'm Meghana.
I'm Sahana, and this is Shankari, our co-host and co-producer. Today we're going to be discussing the book, The Miracles of the Namiya General Store by Keigo Higashino.
Okay, so I'm just gonna give like a quick summary of this book. So the book is about this guy named Mr. Namiya who owns like a general store slash convenience store. And the name of the store is the Namiya General Store. And Namiya sounds very close to the Japanese word for problem.
Mhm.
So a bunch of school children kind of make fun of that and they write to the store owner about their life problems and everything, which are really silly. It's kind of like, how do I get 100% on every single test? Like that.
How do I get more New Year's money?
Yeah, exactly, like stuff like that. And he answers each and every one really, really earnestly. Like he always gives them a fair answer. All of that changes when one day he gets a letter which is like actually serious in tone, and from there, that becomes like the catalyst for a lot, like not just children, but everyone sending in their problems to the Namiya General Store in hopes of getting a solution or a reply. Now, that's all in the past. The book actually starts with these three thugs trying to find like a place to like lay low after they committed a crime, and they stumble into the old dilapidated Namiya General Store. And as they stumble into the store, they actually like get some letters, and they're debating like should we answer these letters or not. And when they decide to and send the reply, they're immediately sent another letter. So they're like, oh, something magical is happening here.
So basically what's happening is that their letters are getting like beamed to the past.
And the people in the past are beaming their letters to the future for them to answer.
Mhm.
So that's like essentially like the kind of like the premise or like the start of the thing, where it's like you have these like three thugs like answering letters in the future, and then Mr. Namiya who started it in the past. But basically the book outlines like how all of these tales and stories of people writing for solutions to their problems, how they all interconnect and how they weave together to show like how kindness is so beautiful.
Yeah, about that, the weaving together. This story, there's so many different moving parts within the story. There's every person that they write letters to. And somehow all of those stories connect in a way which isn't awkward or forced. I know a lot of times when authors try to make their stories interconnected, it can come out feeling like, oh, they just added this in here because they needed these people to be related to each other. But here it genuinely felt like you were stepping into the world and everything made sense. And just the way everything was connected was so pleasing to read. And it was so surprising sometimes how everything was connected. So I genuinely really, really enjoyed that aspect of the book. Like even in the end, even the thieves are connected to the people who wrote the letters in one way or another, which is very cool. Very cool. What are the other good points of the book?
Well, I for one like really liked like the premise of the story. Like I feel like we were talking about this earlier, but if you guys like Studio Ghibli films, this like felt like one of them. It does like the aspect of like magical realism really, really well. And like the store is kind of like a conduit for the past and the present. And the storyline of just like an old man just doing his best to honestly answer every single letter is so touching, because it kind of shows you, like, this leads to another point, but it kind of shows you how like every act of community service has to be done to the fullest in order to like see results. And like spoilers ahead, but like there's like this, and I feel like that's very, very well illustrated when one of the thugs, like near the end of the book, he just like wants to test out the system, I think. So he sends like a blank piece of paper in like the slot, so when he sends his blank piece of paper in the slot, it goes back to Mr. Namiya in the past, and Mr. Namiya kind of gets a blank piece of paper and he's like, oh, and then his son is there with him and he's like, oh, it's just a blank piece of paper, it's a prank, like you shouldn't answer this. But he's like, no, the person who sent this for a reason. I have to answer this honestly. So even a blank piece of paper, he managed to answer so honestly and with all of his heart, and it ends up helping Atsuya. Like his response actually motivates Atsuya to become like change for the better.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, right? Like every single character in this book, and I'm saying every single character, you will love them. You will love all of the characters in the book so much, because sure, all of them do the wrong things sometimes. All of them are a little stupid sometimes, or they make mistakes. But even so, like Higashino manages to convey such like emotion, such depth to his characters, which just gives you so much attachment to them. Like the three thugs in the beginning of the story, Atsuya, Kohei, and Shota, like you'd expect them to be just like, oh, they're just in it for the money. But by the end, you're like, wait, but they're all good guys, I swear.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Namiya is obviously such an empathetic character. Like, like just the way he puts so much into answering these letters for his community. And then every person who writes their letter, you can really see them through their problems. They manage to make it in a way that, again, isn't forced. Like, you learn about these characters naturally, and you do feel so deeply connected to them. Particularly, one of the stories that I really connected to was the person who wrote the second letter in the book, which is like Midnight Blues. The story is divided into like 5 chapters, yeah, and each chapter is a different person writing their letters. Personally, I really connected to Midnight Blues. Like, his character arc, like the character arc of that person, it just really, really hit me so deep. Like, genuinely, such incredible characters are sculpted in this narrative. Would highly recommend, yeah. And then the third thing is just like what this book is really about. What does it all come down to? Like, what is it trying to say about society? I think it's trying to say that you are built on the kindnesses of so many other people. Like, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I think Salana touched on some really good points there. So like when we say we're built on the kindnesses of other people, like the three thugs and Mr. Namiya and even the characters throughout the book, every action they do, they don't even know the person they're doing the kindness for. They're just doing it. So in Midnight Blues, that story, there's like a part where the main character essentially like he's trying to find like a purpose for his music. He's trying so hard to get his music like pushed into the world because he desperately wants to become a successful musician. But it seems like no matter what he tries, like no records are like being able, like selling his music. Nothing's coming out of that. One day he's performing at like a children's home, which is the children's home is very important. It's like a recurring theme throughout the thing. But he's performing at a children's home and he's just playing there. And then after he finishes playing, there's a fire that breaks out in the building, and a girl's brother is trapped inside, and he saves her brother's life at at the death of himself. And the song that he played earlier in the day for that children, that girl ends up becoming a very famous musician, and she takes that song and she plays it at the end of every single concert because she's like, I just want to thank the man who saved my life from the fire.
Yeah.
Like, I just thought, wow, what a touching thing. That just shows like kindness in its purest form. And then also just like the general concept of just like answering every single letter. There's one in particular that really caught my attention, where this kid had written a really like foolhardy letter, like something that people would wave off and brush off. He was kind of just like, how do I ensure I get an 100 on my test? Like, how do I make sure of that? Right. And then he was like, go to your teacher, like Mr. Namiya like gives him a reply that's like something along the lines of like, if you go to your teacher and like ask them certain questions about like, or if you go to somebody and ask them certain questions about their personality and then they quiz you on that, then you'll be able to always get 100 on that. Right. Like, so like along the lines of that, like if you know the subject matter and then you like memorize it and then you come back and ask it again, you'll be able to like realize it. And then like this obviously seems like a kind of like a wisecrack response, but then like he wrote that really seriously, and the kid, like having taken Mr. Namiya's response, in the future he becomes a teacher of his own and the class that he's teaching never seems to pay attention at all. Like they're always like fooling around, like no matter what, even if he like does games with them or tries to make the class interactive, like they never seem to be able to like pay attention. And so then essentially what ends up happening is that he implements Mr. Namiya's strategy, because they're like, all we want to do is like learn how to get 100 on our test. That's all we come to school for. We don't want to play games or anything. So he's like, okay. So he makes them memorize things he makes them like have a game where each of them have to line up with another person and memorize things about the other person. And so then they have quizzes on that. And so like they'll always get 100 on every single quiz if they really know that other person. And then that causes like friendships to go into class. He's like, you made me want to like become a better teacher. And I was like, that's like that. I feel like that's like the perfect example of like how like small kindnesses can really manifest in the future.
Yeah, and it's just like every single person in the book, even if they think they've built themselves independently, like even if they think that they are a product of their like themselves and themselves alone, they are still built on the kindnesses of the people before them. And like as such, they continue to perform kindnesses in order to impact other people. So it's really just about like how Mr. Namiya, one person who like took this little joke of people sending letters into him about their little problems, who made that serious, who genuinely tried to help people. His small kindness like changed literally the world, changed like so many people's lives. And genuinely, that's the message I got out of this book. Like,
and it's Mr. Namiya and the three thugs.
Yeah, and the three thugs, and Atsuya and Kohei and Shota, because like Oh my gosh, this book is just so incredible. Just the way that it portrays kindness, the way that it portrays human nature. Because I think so much of the time we can get really apathetic towards life. We can be like, oh, inherent human nature is negative, right? But I think this book tells you, like, that is not so. We're all just trying to help each other in this world. And I genuinely would so recommend you to read this book. It's genuinely such a good book. It is so underrated. And yeah, read it.
Yeah, you should definitely check out this author as well. He's written like a very popular Japanese books. But reading this book, it genuinely like it gave me like a very much a man called Ove vibes. Like when I was reading this, it's very funny. First of all, it kind of it like touches you in places you didn't know. Like it's just like
It's funny,
it's
it's
so
heartwarming, it's sad.
yeah, like it covers like a whole aspect of emotions, and it's just like shows you how like kindness can be such a huge part of today's society, and we should all strive to like help other people, like even if they don't owe us anything, if we're not close with them, like it all ends up making such a huge impact.
Yeah. So really recommend that you read this
Yeah.
book again. And thank you so much for watching.
Yep, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.